Hi, Badlands Yogis and YouTube land. I'm really glad you're here. I wanted to say a little bit about what healing yoga is and why I chose to call it healing yoga. I want to be really clear from the outset that healing is not cure. And that's not just me, that's the English language. The word healing is based on the word for wholeness. I learned a long time ago, back when I was a street medic, that everybody, regardless of their circumstance, how close they are to their ultimate end, how much pain they're in, everybody, we are all whole. We are all already, right now, whole. Take a deep breath. Breathe that in. We are already whole. So why don't we always feel it? That's the big question, right? If I'm right and we're all already whole, why don't I feel it? The teaching of yoga is that avidya, which could be loosely translated as ignorance. There are various ways of conceptualizing this. Fogginess that clouds our vision. A fogginess that doesn't allow us to receive all of the information that's coming in from the outside, but also arising from the inside. Coming in from the outside, but also arising from the inside. We get cloudy for lots of reasons. We get cloudy with social messages. As young women know, you get a lot of social messages about who and what you are or are supposed to be. Young men get different but equally not true social messages. We get all kinds, we have racism and patriarchy, and all of these things are like clouds, right? And those are social things. Also, no parent is perfect. And we get beliefs from the way that we're raised that may not fit us as we grow older. And then we have coping mechanisms. And maybe those are formed in childhood, or maybe they're formed as we move on in life. But our coping mechanisms, while functional in the circumstances that gave rise to them, aren't going to be functional for our whole lives. Yoga tries to teach us functional, choice-bound coping mechanisms. What I mean by choice-bound is we can create habits that are based on self-knowledge and knowledge of our circumstances and the outside world that allow us to say, oh, which method am I going to use to cope with this? We're going to try one of those at the end of this video. Healing yoga is based on 6 things, and it was my attempt to articulate what makes yoga different than a workout, because here in America, yoga is used for a workout a lot. I don't mind that. I love it when people are in their bodies and enjoying their bodies. Workout sometimes has almost a self-abnegation aspect to it. And what I mean by that is denial, or almost sometimes tinging into punishment. And I'm not saying that every single thing we do in yoga has to feel great. Sometimes you have to practice something before it feels great, right? But our yoga practice is an opportunity to meet ourselves on the mat every day with sometimes a sweaty practice, sometimes a yin practice, which really focuses on sensation. Sometimes a restorative practice, which really focuses on creating the conditions for just completely letting go. Our yoga practice enables us to meditate and find stillness and quiet, not just from the outside, but arising from within. What allows yoga to do that? The first thing is that it's a practice. And a practice arises from two things: regularity and from internal sources. So what does this mean? It's great to go to yoga classes. I love a good yoga class. In fact, as a yoga teacher, it's a real treat to get to go to someone else's class and have someone else lead me through movements. I learned so much about myself, about my body, about my mind, about my breath and my heart. And sometimes it's just nice to put yourself in a trusted person's hands and say, sure, I'll try to do what you say for the next hour to 90 minutes. That's great. It's not complete until you've come home, stepped on your mat, and started to let it come through your body. Maybe your body feels like moving side to side instead of just up and down, right? Maybe you feel like doing tree a different way from everybody else. Maybe you feel like stepping forward instead of stepping back. So this practice that arises from being taught. We're not just making stuff up by ourselves, because these yogis started out millennia ago, and they've done all of this experimentation for us. Now, do we have evidence of warriors and down dogs and upward facing dog and all of these other things that go back millennia? No, we don't. And the texts that we currently have, particularly if you're coming straight out of Iyengar, Endra Devi, Krishnamacharya, or Patabi Joyce's traditions, are based on Krishnamacharya's teaching, which is based on the oral tradition that really does go back that far. So I don't think we're out of the realm of history in practicing especially the most basic postures of yoga. These postures are a container for our sensory experience. Science has recently, within the past 10 to 20 years, started to show that our ability to sense from the inside. So we can sense from the outside things I see, what are the colors that I see, what are the shapes, what are the motions. Perception, sensing my body in space. How do I know where my heel is to touch it when it's behind me? If I can't see my body, how do I know whether my hip is back or forward? That's proprioception, sensing your body in space. And there's a third kind called interoception, sensing the inner landscape of your body. Interoception gets processed through brain structures that almost act as switching points. Now it's too much of a oversimplification, but it works for our purposes. Interoception, sensing the feeling of my feet on the ground. Sensing what it feels like in my pelvis when I take a deep breath and allow my diaphragm to descend and ascend. Sensing my diaphragm expanding my ribcage side to side as I inhale, drawing it back to center as I exhale. Those are all examples of interoception. Yoga postures are containers for interoception. Those messages get processed through these brain structures that switch us in and out of vigilance and connection, outer and inner. Now, it doesn't mean at the very first time, if you're in a hypervigilant state, which is sometimes the result of trauma, sometimes the result of stress. Doesn't mean the very first time is going to go up and tell that switching station, chill out. We can sense the inside for a little moment here. However, multiple repetitions and repetitions that come from repeatedly meeting myself in this 10-foot space, right? Meeting myself day after day, sensing, allowing, letting go, without judgment, without anticipation, as another honored teacher says. Those are the things that over time help us switch from outer to inner, to vigilance, from vigilance to connection, and back again, right? That's what's called resilience, our ability to choose. Vigilance, connection. Can I ride the crest of those two right now, or do I need to be all vigilant, or do I need to be all inner? Yoga is a technology for cultivating interoception. So it's practice, it's interior sensation. Breath as an engine of movement. We often reduce the breath to an exchange of gases. In goes oxygen, out goes carbon dioxide, right? But we all know that's already a simplification. The air contains so many other compounds, so many other molecules. When we exhale, that's one of our body's mainline ways to balance acids and bases, which is incredibly important for all of the chemistry that happens in our body. It's one of our body's main ways of what it often goes as detoxifying, or getting rid of the byproducts of living, right? Getting rid of the byproducts of those chemical reactions that create consciousness and movement and digestion and joy. Not only that, but your breath is the primary mover, aside from, actually probably the secondary, depending upon what your lifestyle is, aside from general movement. It's one of the primary movers for your whole lymphatic system. Your lymphatic system is the fluid in which your interior space is bathed. It's crucial for the fascial system, which we're now learning has so many nervous system, motion, and sensory properties. That aside, your lymphatic system doesn't have an independent pump. Your vascular system, your blood system does, right? It's this beautiful thing over just to the left in your chest, and it's actually more like that. But all of that aside, that pumps our blood throughout the whole system. Our lymphatic system relies upon us moving. So this is one of the reasons it's so important to get up and walk a little bit every hour. It's one of the reasons it's so important to do yoga in the mornings. Our breath is one of the primary movers here. Our breath is an engine of movement internal to our bodies. The depth of your breath is the depth of that motion. In addition, this diaphragm, the respiratory diaphragm, and then the pelvic diaphragm, also known as PFM or pelvic floor muscles, Mula Bandha, and then this is part of Uddiyana Bandha. When they're moving together, it's a signal to our central nervous system that we can be connected, that we can be less vigilant. Often we get stuck with one up, one down. Starting to resynchronize, coming back in to that very childlike, baby-like breathing pattern is another function of the breath in yoga. In yoga, we're often synchronizing inhales with opening and exhales with folding. That synchronization is part of making the movement of the lymphatic system more ordered, part of allowing these diaphragms to synchronize, and part of sensing the internal body and helping ourselves just chill down just that little bit that makes the rest of the day go so much better. Breath as an engine of all movement. Movement is synchronized to breath. Breath, in fact, has 4 phases. It's not just an inhale and an exhale. It's an inhale, and then there's a pause. There can be. And then there's an exhale. There can be another pause. Cultivating all 4 phases of the breath. Inhale, pausing, exhale, pausing is a basic tenet of yoga practice. And it's part of what helps it be a healing practice, a practice that connects us to the wholeness that we already are. Yoga doesn't change us. It changes the way we feel ourselves. Doesn't cure. It connects. The 4th is personalization. And this is incredibly important. You can never completely personalize a class for many people. What you want and need, and those sometimes align and sometimes don't, as we know, on a given day, can't be fully catered to in a group class. Here, on your mat, in your space, your space is only as big as between a bed and a wall. What you can give yourself is a process of starting, sensing, responding, altering perhaps, or going forward with even more gusto, either one. And then observing, what does that do? Responding, observing. This is our practice, yours, mine, and that personalization is crucial to yoga's ability to connect us to our own wholeness, to cultivate not just the feeling. The feeling comes first, and then it can arise into a belief. And that belief then is grounded in experience. Yoga gives us an opportunity to experience the truth of our own wholeness every single day. Whether you can or want to do a warrior pose, or whether you are laying in bed, only breathing. Those are both yoga practices. Both of them have the potential to connect us to our wholeness, true core. We talked about the respiratory diaphragm and the pelvic diaphragm. These are parts of what I refer to as true core, which is a way of talking about what yoga calls bandhas, B-A-N-D-H-A-S. Bandha translates as lock. It's not like a lock and key. I remember when I learned about this 20 odd years ago, whenever it was, I thought, I don't want to lock up anything in my body. That doesn't sound like a good idea. So I resisted it for a while, much to my detriment. it's a lock like we have on the Panama Canal, right? If two bodies of water are at different levels, we block off here, we float the boat in at this level, we block off behind it, and then we raise the water level. And then we open this lock at the new level, block behind it again, raise the level, right? And so a boat can go from low water to high water using a system of locks. And this is closer to what yoga means by a lock. Our bandhas, pelvic floor, is the start of Mula Bandha. I call that the elevator. That's the cue that I most often use. The drawstring, this is the transverse abdominis. There are more, but the muscle, the primary muscle that we're targeting, goes from hip bone to hip bone. It also goes around the body. So it's not just here, but this space, if you imagine trying to draw your forward hip bones toward each other, it's a really good space to feel and then create the movement, drawstring. Imagine you have yoga pants on, or better yet, imagine you have on old school sweatpants with the drawstring, but you can only draw the drawstring in from the inside. Drawing these forward hip points toward each other. It's not so much about pressing the belly back as it is about bringing everything closer to center. And then there are a set of muscles that move up what I call the gut side of the spine. So behind your digestive machinery, behind the sausage, on the gut side of the spine, are a set of muscles that, as grown-ups, we have stopped sensing. We backgrounded them a long time ago because we had lots of other things to do, like learn how to talk and do math and, run, jump, play, love, and create. So our brains have sort of backgrounded that. We can reestablish that sensory connection and then learn to sort of lift. It's almost like playing a xylophone up the gut side of the spine. I know one famous teacher who cues it like this, which I love. That's the zipper, zipping up the gut side of the spine. Those three things together make what I call true core. Why is it true core? Because you can do like Roman lifts on the chair, you can do side crunches, you can do crunches all day long for a really long time and never learn to sense or move from these structures. Once you're sensing and moving these three structures, the outer abs come along for the ride. So if you lift elevator, drawstring, zipper, all of a sudden, the rectus, the rest of the transverse, and the obliques come in to support that action, particularly if you're doing it on the exhale. Yoga teaches this. Yoga teaches us to move from these deep internal structures that are so crucial to body integration, sensation, and maintenance of balance as we age, maintenance of our mobility and our breath as we age. And I also like to practice seasonally, and I think it's really important because it gives us the most surface level of this is that Ayurveda, which is the sister science of yoga, reckons seasons into 6 instead of 4. Now they're not different, right? There are Sanskrit names for them, but basically winter and summer, so let's maybe do it like this, are twice as long, and they each have early and late. And then autumn and spring are the transitional seasons. You can tell that in a 12-month year, reckoned into 6 seasons, every 2 months there's a change. These changes are the responses to the difference in light, humidity, and warmth. And that is what controls our circadian rhythm. One of the molecules that's been the most studied recently is melatonin, and melatonin is controlled through the cycle of the year by light, heat, and humidity. Light and heat are the primary drivers. So on a surface level, if we're checking in every 2 months to see how is my environment affecting me, how am I feeling, how's my yoga practice affecting me, we have a daily potential for check-in, and then we have a periodic, like, let's just take an extra little bit of time and check in. In addition, you're cooperating with your circadian rhythms. I spent a long time, back when I was a street medic, trying to go against circadian rhythm and looking for ways to hack it. Didn't do me any good. Now, I know a lot of us, we need the people who work nights. There are things that you can do to support the system through that. I also think it's probably a good idea as a culture for us to create opportunities for people who are on those schedules to have a different one, but that's another separate conversation. Those of us like me who now can go to sleep when they're tired and wake when they're rested, who can eat at times that make sense for the body, who can withhold food for the 2 to 3 hours before sleep so that the body can do what it naturally does during sleep. It is incredibly supportive to our health and will contribute to whatever cures you're subscribing to in other sections of your life. And it will start to remove some of the clouds to our feeling of wholeness if we just cooperate with those rhythms. And so I find that practicing yoga seasonally, slightly different postures, slightly different rhythms, slightly different breathings at different times of year, is incredibly supportive to my mindfulness around that. Because I have spent a lot of my life with beliefs of sleep when you're dead. Remember the 80s? Yeah, sleep when you're dead. And working all night, sleeping during the day, eating out of convenience stores. And so for me, it's a practice of repairing some of what I've done in my life. For everyone, it can be an experience of cooperating with our original wholeness. So those are the aspects of yoga that make it a healing practice. I call what we do at Badlands Yoga healing yoga because it's not a brand. It's descriptive. It supports our connection to our wholeness. That's the beginning and end of what healing means. Now, are you likely to feel better along the way? Are you likely to have less pain? Are you likely to avert chronic conditions or improve them? Maybe. I've certainly had that experience in my life. And all of our experience is improved when we're feeling at one with ourselves. When we appreciate the ways in which we are already completely whole, completely who we need to be in this moment, for this breath. And I invite you to take that journey with me on this channel. You can also check out badlandsyoga.com, which is our website for small group classes, private sessions, workshops. We have some exciting things coming up. So if you're interested, check it out. There's a newsletter. It comes out somewhere between 1 and 4 times a month. And sometimes I write there, "You're welcome. in our community. You're welcome on the website. You're welcome in classes. And I hope to be a voice welcoming you home to your own practice, to your own experience. For now, we are going to practice Brahmari breath. That may sound super technical, and it's super simple. Brahmari translates as bumblebee. And there are a couple of mudras that you might want to try as you practice this. Brahmari is bumblebee, and we're simply going to hum as we exhale. That's the whole thing. That's the breath. One mudra is bumblebee mudra. Index finger to the base of the thumb. Thumb touches third finger. If you want to try that, you can do it with or without the hand motion. You can close your eyes or leave them open. You can do it seated. You can do it standing. You can do it lying down. You can do it with other yoga postures. We're going to do 3 Brahmari breaths. Try to sense where you're feeling those vibrations. Return to natural patterns of breathing and just watch, feel, listen. When you're talking with a friend, right? You're not listening only for what they're saying. You're listening with your whole being. You're creating an environment for them to reveal themselves in. And they do that with words, and with pauses, and with lots of other signals. So listen to yourself the same way. Doesn't matter if you hear anything, feel anything. The point is to be there. And sometimes, and I've experienced this before as well, if we haven't listened for a really long time, it's like trying to call that friend. Right? They may not pick up the first few times. Sometimes you have to send a letter and then call and then send a funny email and then share a funny thing from whatever social media platform you like and then call again. Sometimes we have to do that with ourselves because we've been not listening to certain things, to certain messages, to certain experiences for so long. So give yourself the chance to respond. We're going to do 3 more breaths with Apana Mudra. Thumb inside of 4 fingers. Just notice how this makes you feel, and if it doesn't feel right, then please don't do it. If you're sitting, rest this kind of close up to your hip bones. Just feel from the inside. Observe the next few natural breaths. That's it. So you can call it humming, you can call it bumblebee breath, you can call it Brahmari breath. What's important is that you observe how it felt to you, and then include it in your day, in your practice, if it felt good, if it felt right. I'm glad you're here, and I look forward to spending more time humming and breathing and moving. Happy Yoga Day.